In today's episode, we're introducing a brand new 5-part series.
Come along as we plan our next Disney vacations.
You'll get a front row seat as we figure out all the details of our own vacations, from when to go, where to stay, itinerary plans, dining reservations, and fast passes, and even outfit planning and packing.
But first, let's talk about the reopening of Disney and how things will be different there in 2020.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. We're Spring and Claire, friends since middle school, mutual Disney lovers, and travel planners. We talk about Disney so much that we thought it would be fun to record our chats to share with you. You may know that in Disney lingo, extra magic hours are more hours to have fun in the parks. Well, we're the extra magic moms, putting more magic into Disney vacation planning. We're here to help make your next trip extra magical, not extra stressful. Come along as we share our best tips, tricks, and Disney planning knowledge. So obviously we are travel planners, and in addition to planning other people's vacations, we plan our own. Spring and I both have vacations coming up currently scheduled for August that we've been planning for a while. And so we were really excited to do this new 5-part series, but obviously things are different right now. We are getting tons of information coming out from Disney over probably the last week. And there's lots of different changes and things that are just going to look different for right now in this pandemic phase of life in the world. So we wanted to just recap some of those changes, what we know currently, so that we go into this 5-part planning series knowing that things are a little bit different, and some of the things that we talk about might not technically apply right now, but they will apply most likely when things come back in normal sort of operating conditions at Disney. So let's do a quick recap of the Walt Disney World reopening plans, which include the dates for reopening as well as their enhanced health and safety measures for guests at the parks and the resorts and transportation, basically everywhere across Disney. And then we'll talk about some of the recent changes that they have just started implementing to people's actual vacations that were already scheduled for the reopening. So let's start with the reopening dates. So we know that the parks are going to reopen in mid-July. So Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom, July 11th. And Hollywood Studios and Epcot, July 15th, right?
Right. Very exciting.
Yes, very exciting. We also know that select Disney resorts, AKA hotels, will be reopening starting June 22nd. And those are being limited right now to the DVC level resorts, which are all deluxe level, in addition to the Disney Campground Fort Wilderness. We do know Disney Springs is already open, which I'm sure everybody is aware of. And they initially started with some non-Disney restaurants and shops that had opened. And since then, some of the Disney-owned ones have opened. They have a lot of these health and safety protocols that we're going to talk about right now already in place. And we've already started to see some other YouTubers and bloggers that have experienced all of those measures in effect. And it seems to be going well.
Definitely.
So as far as enhanced protective measures go, face masks, face coverings for all guests over the age of 2 at all times, with the exception of a couple of places. So there will potentially be, there's been some talk about some rest areas where the face mask requirement is kind of lifted to give you an opportunity to just chill out, cool off a little bit, not be around other people. There's a lot of social distancing, physical distancing that will occur in those locations. But we haven't heard too much details about that yet. Anyone under 2, face masks are not advised due to suffocation concerns and, just being too little to really understand the concept or keep it on even.
Right.
And then the other place that they talked about, obviously in your hotel room, you don't have to have your own mask on, but also when you're at the resorts and swimming in the pools, you will not be required to wear your mask, which is good. However, we have been joking around about the whole tan line concept.
Right. That is the first thing that Paisley mentioned to her doctor the other day when we talked about going on vacation. Paisley said, but we'd get funny tan lines. And her doctor was like, oh, I didn't even think of that. That's so funny.
Yeah.
But I was telling Erin that if we do end up going in August, we don't normally take trips during the middle of the day, but that's something that we may actually consider now just for a break. And then obviously dining is the other place that we will not have to wear a mask.
And this is funny that you mentioned that, because there's a lot of sort of polarizing opinions about whether you go at rope drop and stay all the way until fireworks, or whether you take breaks. And I'm a huge break proponent.
And I'm the
So,
opposite.
and this is where it comes back to the whole, we're park hoppers normally, and you tend to be single day park ticket
Definitely.
buyers. So yeah, there's a lot of, and I do think that it's a really good point, because now with the face mask requirements and some of the changes at the parks, it might be much more beneficial to do that midday break and just give yourselves an opportunity to kind of be mask free, whether it's chilling at the pool or taking a nap in your room, whatever it is, which is also just a really good idea, I think, personally, in August, because of the temperatures and the way
Right.
Florida weather is. Increased hand sanitizers, and also the addition of hand washing stations, which is something that Disney had actually put in place right before the closures happened in March. So this is one of the things that we've talked about being a great thing to have even ongoing after all these changes happen. So it's great to have more access. And then physical barriers. So the addition of plexiglass at point of sale locations to protect cashiers, whether it's at World of Disney or a shopping location, or a dining resort, or a dining facility. So again, just providing an extra measure of safety for the cast members. Okay, so next up is physical distancing. So overall reduced crowd capacities is something that Disney is definitely going to do, following recommendations from the CDC and other professionals. So we have heard the 25% number, but no confirmation on that from Disney as to what the actual number is. But they would be reducing the capacity across everywhere at Disney World. So parks, restaurants, retail shops, ride queues, and transportation. The other big change, and this is totally new and potentially could be something that also stays even after all of this scenario is over, is a brand new reservation system to even access the park or get into the park. So this one, we have no clue what it looks like yet. It has not been launched by Disney quite yet. They have basically said that it will be a software or a program that you can use, probably accessible through My Disney Experience.
Right. This is going to be a weird one for a lot of people, including us. And also why park hopping is not going to be a thing right now. So you can make a reservation for Magic Kingdom, you may leave, but you can go back. So it's not once you leave, you can't go anymore. You have the reservation technically for the whole day.
Right.
But it's going to be different.
It is, for sure. And again, we don't know what this looks like. Hopefully it's easy to use. Hopefully it's pretty fair. We have heard some rumors about different percentages based on whether or not you're a resort guest or maybe an annual pass holder. So just making sure that there's still some availability for locals that like to go regularly to still have access to get into the parks. But of course, wanting to ensure, and I know Disney wants this, it's just a matter of like the reduced capacities and whatnot, but wanting to provide those with resort reservations. You've traveled X number of miles to come to Disney and stay, and wanting to allow you to have access to get into the parks as well. Which we have talked about this before, but the capacity reductions are across the board. So while the parks are being reduced in capacity, so are the resorts. So it should be a sort of match of, you know, numbers that are staying at the resorts and that are allowed into the parks, if that makes sense. And then another big change, which is temporary, according to Disney, is the suspension of parades, fireworks, and character meets. We also just got some newer information that was probably yesterday, that some specifics on what is closed. So included are Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. We already knew about the character experiences, but character dining is also something that will not be returning, at least at the beginning or the initial phase of the reopening. We also saw the electrical water pageant. So yeah, so there's quite a few different experiences. And again, this is all with the effort or the intention by Disney to reduce anything that sort of gathers crowds or doesn't allow people to physically distance in the way that they need to right now.
Right.
The other thing relative to physical distancing that they're doing is providing some signage throughout the parks, whether it's signs on the ground that show you where to stand to ensure the 6 feet distance, or signs around the park reminding you to physically distance. So this is kind of the concept of your personal bubble and reinforcing that throughout. We know that historically that's not something that happens at Disney because it's so crowded, and they do try to get as many guests in as possible. And there are shows and fireworks presentations and even different attractions where they just try to pack you in so that as many people can see it at one time. And obviously we can't do that right now.
Right.
Even though we had this information about the initial phase or the initial reopening of Disney, we haven't gotten any communication from them about what the sort of follow-up phases will look like. Or
right. We don't know how long those phases last. No
right.
idea.
Right. And I don't even think Disney knows because they're just going to take
Right.
it week by week.
Of course.
So
that's fair.
Yeah. So that's physical distancing. That's item number 2. Number 3 is enhanced cleaning and sanitation. So we all love the fact that Disney already has a ridiculously intense sanitation process. They have basically, you know, an entire department that handles that kind of thing. And we love the cleanliness of Disney. So they're enhancing that even more so. So just having especially more frequent cleaning of high touch point locations or entry points. We don't even know what the actual entry into the park is going to look like. As most people know, right now you tap either your card or your Magic Band onto the tap style and use your finger biometric that connects you to your park ticket. And we don't know what that's going to look like because that's a high touch point area. So it could be, you know, wiping it down with a hand sanitizer wipe after each person goes through.
Yeah. Which is easy enough.
Sure. But definitely looking at all of those things and taking into account where they need to make changes to accommodate those high touch point areas. And then the temperature and health screening. So again, this is something that's already happening at Disney Springs. This is a third party providing these touchless temperature checks, and it applies to guests and cast members. So everybody, in order to get into the Disney property, depending on where you go. So if your entry is in Disney Springs or your entry is in, I would assume, upon check-in at your resort, you will have the touchless temperature check. I believe it's 100.4 is the maximum requirement. So your temperature needs to be under that point in order to gain access. We know currently at Disney Springs, there's a cooling tent. So if you just happen to be a little overheated and it's not a true temperature, core body temperature, that you can have a little bit of a rest and relaxation, cool off in the tent, and then they'll take your temperature again. But it's currently happening. It seems to be pretty streamlined and flawless as far as the process goes. And I haven't heard anything negative coming out of that whole concept.
Me neither.
And then finally, limited contact enhancements. So we already know that Magic Bands do a lot. Not just your park tickets or your room key, but also you can attach a credit card and pay through everything with that. Not everybody does that currently. So one of the enhancements that Disney is doing is increasing the ability for contactless payment to include Apple Pay and Google Pay. So that if you don't have a Magic Band for whatever reason, you do have another alternative for a touchless form of payment. They're also increasing the mobile order availability. So mobile order is something that Disney launched a year or two ago, and it basically gives you the ability to go on your My Disney app on your phone while you're at the park or Disney Springs, pull up a restaurant, pick what you want, add it to your order, pay for it on your phone, and then simply go to a special line for pickup. Now, before all of this happened with the closure and the reopening of Disney, there weren't a ton of restaurants that were on this mobile order platform. So one of the things that they'll be implementing is many more restaurants available to do mobile order so that you are simply walking up to grab your order instead of having to stand in a line that is, separated by 6 feet.
I wonder if some of the restaurants will do something similar to be our guests, because we pre-order the night before. You go in, they ask your name, they give you the adorable little rose, and then you sit down at a table and they find you. It's magical. They find you, they know where you are, So the waitress just comes over, brings you your food, and see you later. I
Right.
did read that instead of you going to get your own drink at some places, cast members will be doing that for you. I think it'll be just so interesting to see how all of this plays out, but none of it really, it doesn't sound like a bad thing to me. It's almost easier,
Yeah.
pre-ordering my food. Perfect. I'm starving. I don't have to wait for it. I'll do other things while I'm waiting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think because that kind of wraps up all of the different changes that they're implementing. And I think that there are really not a ton of them that are going to be intrusive or change the experience. I mean, obviously, the face masks is a big deal. So if
Right.
you're somebody who isn't comfortable wearing them and you're concerned about wearing them in the heat, which we're going to talk about in a second because our trips happen to be in August, um, that is a consideration, and maybe you want to wait until next year to think about your Disney trip. Also, a lot of people are concerned about the loss of a lot of the sort of free or included features or benefits to your Disney trip. We know that
Right.
Disney's not inexpensive. It is an investment. That's why we do what we do, because we want to ensure that you plan your trip to the best of your ability and sort of maximize on everything and not miss opportunities. Or the worst thing is coming home from a Disney vacation and being disappointed. Something didn't go the way you wanted, or you didn't get to do everything. And some of that has to do with expectations, but a lot of it has to do with planning properly and just
Definitely.
going into your trip knowing. Um, Not that you have to have this rigid itinerary that you're sticking to and you're constantly looking at it. Okay, we have to be here at 2 o'clock and then we're doing this at 2:45, but just
Right.
maximizing what you have
Right.
access to. One of the things that everybody loves about Disney is that um, a lot is included with that high price tag. So things like meeting characters and all of the fireworks shows and what was the other big one? Oh, the extra magic hours, which is what we're named after. That whole benefit is, a sort of freebie that people really love. And so I know that there's a lot of concern about those things not being included right now. And I get the reason why they're not, because you wouldn't be able to adhere to all of these health and safety protocols if you didn't. But if that's a really big deal for you and that really is going to impact whether or not you have fun on your trip, then you should probably consider thinking about a different time, or at least knowing a little bit more what it's going to look like, because it's so unknown right now. Nothing has even opened up yet.
Very. Right. And I think if those things come back, they're going to come back one at a time. I think it would be easy for them to put extra magic hours in first, for instance, because it's the same thing, just earlier or later. Fireworks, however, it's a crowd puller. So everyone is in the same area. Extra magic hours, not so much. Actually, extra magic hours, it's like a free for all.
Yeah.
You're just like, great, I can ride this thing 5 times in a row
Mhm.
because there's no line. So it'll be interesting to see which comes back, if at all, and what comes back first.
Right.
So
And I know
I'm
that we
excited
talked
about those
briefly
things.
about special ticketed events like Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. That's something that you and your family were interested in for this upcoming trip. And as of right now, we do have confirmation that nothing is being canceled or changed relative to ticket sales for those. Um, However, we kind of talked about the idea that it's already a reduced capacity for those events because um, just like extra magic hours, it's much easier to get on rides. So clearly they aren't selling as many tickets as their regular sort of entry for the day at that park. This happens to be Magic Kingdom for Not So Scary. Um, but it's already sort of reduced capacity. So it makes sense that it's a little bit easier to accommodate that,
Right.
which is what I would have thought about extra magic hours too. But I think they're just trying to reduce the number of hours that the parks are actually open in total,
Yeah.
because now they need even more time for cleaning and sanitation and getting ready for the next day.
Right.
So
That's
that
very
makes
true.
sense. All right, so let's really quickly talk about some of the recent steps that Disney has actually taken to people's vacations that they have planned. Right now, this only goes out a couple of months, I think. It has impacted our vacations. So the end of August trips, I heard till the end of September. But then we don't know, how regularly they're going to continue doing this for reservations that are upcoming. So those recent actions include FastPass Plus and dining reservation cancellations, as well as other experiences like Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique and some of the dinner shows you have to prepay for and reserve. Those things have all been canceled. And while this was a real shock to the system when we started getting our emails and our notifications that things were being canceled, it does make sense, because in order for Disney to implement reduced capacity, no longer using the fast pass lanes, needing those to provide 6-foot distancing for just the regular queue, standby queue, not having all dining locations open in the initial phase. So, I think they're still working through the process of figuring out which ones are going to be open and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
So not being able to keep those reservations. And then different experiences just simply because they don't allow for physical distancing. So those are things that folks with reservations have already seen come through or will see come through depending on the timing of your trip. We also know that Disney has temporarily paused all new reservations, whether it's for resorts and packages or for park tickets, as well as modifications to existing reservations. And this was just for a short period of time. I think that's going to start changing as Disney starts reaching out about vacations, because one of the big changes that is happening is your resort location. So if you had a reservation for a resort that is a value or a moderate level, they are going to be reaching out, contacting you or your travel agent to make changes to that reservation, because those resorts will not be open at the initial reopening phase. So as we mentioned earlier, it's only going to be the deluxe level DVC resorts that will reopen. What that means is that if you do decide to keep your reservation, they are going to move you to a deluxe level, which means you get an automatic upgrade. So if they are making the change for you simply because your resort won't be opened and they're moving you to one that will. So if your reservation's at Pop or Music, All-Star Music, then they're going to potentially move you to, let's say, the Polynesian. So that is an immediate upgrade from a value level resort to a deluxe level resort. And that is not something that you'll pay for. However, if you make a change to your reservation on your own and switch to one of the resorts that's open, or switch your reservation to another time, those charges will be on you. So that's something to make sure that you wait for your travel agent or Disney to reach out and make those changes. So let's take a couple minutes to talk about our own trips. So like I mentioned, they are both coming up at the end of August. They overlap, actually, which was originally unplanned, and now we have plans, but
total coincidence.
It was, which is so funny. So we're not going to talk about specific dates. It's just the end of August. So one of the things that, we sort of both had to think about and take into consideration with all of these changes that are happening is the heat and the weather with the new requirements for face masks. So I think that's something that's weighed on both of our decisions, which currently we haven't done anything with our reservations. We're keeping them until we know a little bit more and make a few more decisions about what's happening. But so I guess I'll start. So my trip is a little bit different. We are DVC members. We are also military. So we've done Disney as a military family. So I have a lot of tips and tricks relative to Shades of Green and some of the other, military discounts. But the reason why I mentioned this is because our trip is a DVC resort using our points. So DVC is Disney Vacation Club, and it's their timeshare sort of like thing at Disney. And so we used points to book our stay. And ordinarily when we do our park tickets, we use the military benefit or promotional tickets that are offered to retired and active duty military. We had not yet purchased our park tickets yet. And so as we just mentioned a few minutes ago, the all new sales for tickets has been temporarily paused. So we are going into this trip not really knowing whether or not we're going to get park tickets or not. We had not purchased them yet because they are promotional and they do have a set time limit for when you can use them. And we just hadn't figured out yet if they would be refundable or if they would be roll over to 2021. We just hadn't done all of that work yet. And then all of a sudden the announcement came out that all new sales were temporarily paused. So that was a little bit of a challenge
Yeah.
and a little freak out. But all of that being said, we are also the family, which may not be a popular opinion, but we're the family that loves going for non-park Disney trips. What that means is that we love going to Disney and either last year for the first time we stayed at the campground with our camper that we towed down from New York, or just staying at a hotel and being able to use all of the benefits and the amenities of our resort. Also, we are very much the people that make a day out of Disney Springs, and that doesn't include going to the movies or bowling. It's doing all the other stuff, a lot of which is either free or very cheap. So we're that family. We love hanging out by the pools. We also love doing some of the special ticketed events. So last year for our August trip, which was technically a non-park trip, we did purchase Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party tickets. So that was like a portion of the day. But we did get to go and we got to ride Mine Train and do some other things that we love. So it wasn't thoroughly, I guess, a non-park trip. But my point is that we didn't buy our military promotional tickets for that trip. So we did lots of other things. And so for those reasons, we are still considering our August trip, keeping it and going. It means that we would need to wear the masks when we're in public spaces. I think I forgot to mention the other time that you're allowed to take your mask off is when you're seated at a table at your dining location. So once you've been seated and it's time to eat and drink and do all of those things, obviously you're not being requested or required to keep that on and manage how to get a French fry under your mask. So they can come off there. They just need to go back on if you get up to go to the restroom, or when it's time to go up and pay or leave the facility, you'll have to put them back on. So, between being in the pool a lot, dining a lot, and just kind of checking out all the different things that there are to do at the resorts. It still, I think, would be a really fun, relaxing, pleasurable, especially since we've all been in this state of sort of quarantine or lockdown and social distancing in effect, and people just really need vacations right now.
Definitely.
Cabin fever is something fierce.
I am people.
Yeah. So I think that's what's weighing on our decisions right now. Obviously, just as with everything else, if we do have to make a change, if we do have to cancel, our points will be moved. They won't be lost. Any other, money that we put down toward that Disney trip will be refunded or able to sort of move over to 2021. So I'm not really worried about that. It's just kind of trying to make the decision that's right for our family and take into consideration that COVID-19 is still a thing. It's still out there, making sure that we feel safe. But truthfully, I feel like I would much rather go to Disney than even the grocery store or something. And I do think that speaks volumes for Disney. Initially when all of these changes started being communicated and started happening and we started getting our cancellations for dining and stuff like that, it is hard. You put a lot of time and effort into planning, especially us as Disney vacation planners. So I do think that you put a lot of your heart and soul into the whole process, and it does sting a little. But at the same time, I feel just really relieved and like, yeah, that's Disney. They would do it no other way. Like they would never open. There was a lot of questioning about why they weren't opening as early as some of the other theme parks in Orlando. And I kind of just immediately was like, well, of course they're not. They're taking their time. And
I know that a lot of people are sad and frustrated, but it's not forever. It will get better. And like you said before, we just need to trust that they're doing the right thing for all of us. And so I myself, I agree. I appreciate that they're taking their time and doing it right and making sure that if I decide to go with my family, that it's going to be okay.
One of the other things that we didn't talk about yet was the fact that dining plans have also been canceled. And it's one of the, I guess, temporary changes for Disney is that dining plans will not be available for the foreseeable future. And I think that's a good segue into your trip, because you did have one of those free dining packages booked as part of your stay.
Yes, not only did we have a free dining package booked, but when we go to Disney, one of the things that Aaron loves and needs and wants is the dining package, free or not. That's his thing. Mine is we get a direct flight because I can't stop.
Same.
Once I get on, please don't make me get off and do that again. So anyway, yes, our reservations have obviously all been canceled, but we're trying to decide right now that whether or not we still want to go. I did forget initially that we had a split stay. So now not only are we deciding if we want to go for the whole thing, we're deciding if we want to just do one or the other. One of the trips was a very small trip, 3 days, and had no dining plan whatsoever and also no tickets. But we did have not so scary Halloween party tickets. So we were still going to do Magic Kingdom, obviously, that day for half the day, which was good enough for us because we also enjoyed staying at the resort, swimming in the pool, or usually the first day we were there, we do 1900 Park Fair. So we were going to try something else because obviously we didn't have the dining package for that time. So now we're trying to decide if we'll do that tiny little stay. And then, of course, once I mentioned it to Aaron, he was like, I wonder if we could add one more day to that. And I was like, I'm pretty sure we can't make any changes to the reservation.
Right.
But then the second part of the stay was deluxe at Animal Kingdom Lodge, which I did read only the villas are going to be open in the beginning. And the masks they're a big thing for us. I mean, we have she'll be 9 at that point, and it's going to be hot. I mean, there's no getting around it. It's going to be hot, and we're going to want to take breaks. So if those places are available that we can take breaks, if we decide that there's only going to be 25% capacity and we can just get on rides in 15 minutes or so without having to wait a long time, going back to the pool for a cool off and taking a break is an option. I'm not really sure what we're going to do, but we do already have our plane tickets. And I don't know. I'm definitely full of I don't knows. I do know that I'm not canceling because that's not in our vocabulary. And it's possible that we'll reschedule, maybe one, maybe both. I don't know. Every day we get a little bit closer to, we can do this, we can go, we can make one of them happen. Which one's it going to be? I don't know. But it's kind of exciting, like I had mentioned before, that we could be, no longer staying at All-Star Music, I think we have booked. Funny that I don't even remember. Just for the little split stay in the beginning, where we would end up. It's kind of exciting. Like, just do whatever you want, Disney. I'm all yours. Put me in the Polynesian.
At the deluxe resort. Yeah. I
will gladly take it.
Right.
Yeah. Deluxe, moderate, whatever. Big, small, I don't know. I would eventually like to stay at all of the hotels anyway, all of the resorts. So letting them pick is kind of fun. And knowing that the lodge isn't open yet. But again, this is something that may change by the time we go. Just like the party, it may or may not still be on. I don't know. It's full of a whole bunch of I don't knows. But I do know that if I don't get there this time, I will eventually get there.
That's all the pixie dust for today.
Hopefully the show has been helpful. And if you enjoyed the show, we'd love for you to subscribe. Hello.
And tune in next week or next episode for more Disney tips, tricks, and chit chat.
You can also find us on Instagram for extra magic and message us to plan your next trip.
And remember, if you can dream it, we can plan it. Bye.
Bye.
Our next episode, which is our first official episode of the trip planning series, we're going to talk about dates. When do you pick when to go and where do you stay?